Good greetings, Morehouse brothers, far and wide. I'm making this video as a response and to really add to the conversation. I thought that it was an interesting discussion on this crossroads that the Alumni Association did about the election 2020. That's really coming up in about 20 days. And in the spirit of Morehouse, I thought we should listen to some other viewpoints. And I just wanted to raise a few questions and make some statements about some of the research I've done, because I've always been somewhat of a contrarian thinker, and maybe it's just the way I grew up. I grew up as a military brat. When I was in high school, I read an article, and it would have been in like 82 or 83. And I read an article that Lerone Bennett Jr. wrote about Morehouse, and I knew immediately that's the place for me. But I didn't go right away. I had a scholarship offers to play basketball, I was in love with the game. So I played a couple of years in junior college at Johnson County Community College in Kansas City, out in Johnson County, Kansas. And but I had two fortunate encounters with Morehouse Men. One of them, I was playing street ball somewhere outside in Kansas City at a park, and the guy had on some Morehouse t-shirt, sweats, something like that. And it turned out to be John Eves. He was working at the NCAA at the time. And I said, "Hey man, did you go to Morehouse?" He said, "Yeah, And I said, "Man, I'm really thinking about going there. I'm playing ball over here for a couple of years." And he gave me the Morehouse spiel that we've all done for young people whenever we run into them. And I don't have to tell you guys, because I bet you there's not a Morehouse man who hasn't done it, right? And he did a good job. And then I also had an English class, and it was mandatory. They said you have to go to this. We got a speaker coming in, and his name is Lerone Bennett Jr., and you need to go to this thing. So I was like, that's the guy that wrote the article on Morehouse. So I went, and after it, I approached him. He had his pipe, and I said, you wrote the article about Morehouse. I said, I'm really interested in Morehouse. He took his pipe out. Young man, if you can find your way to Morehouse College, I promise you it will change your life. It would be one of the best decisions you can ever make. And I thought, God really feels strong about Morehouse. And I said, I'm going. And I just made it up in my mind. My parents were in Germany. My dad was in the Army chaplain, so he was in Germany. And I was just on my own. I had to figure it all out on my own. And I just got in my car with few dollars that I had, and I just pointed towards Atlanta and drove to Atlanta. And I went to go visit Sterling Hudson, who was the admissions director. I went there all summer long. I just went there once a week until I just badgered him until he let me in. He said, one day I got there and he had a certificate printed out. He said, welcome to Morehouse. The issue was I had a balance at the school that I was at. It was raggedy. I was struggling there. And so they wouldn't release my transcript, so he couldn't really make a decision. But he made an executive decision and he let me in, And it really did change my life. It just changed my life because it really changed my perspective. Some of the ideas, that, you could almost feel Dr. King's presence on that campus, And that really brings us to the subject today. We're talking about this election 2020, and I want to lean on some of Dr. King's words that he, when he wrote The Purpose of Education in 1947, when he was 17 years old. He warned us. He said, you got to worry about these half-truths. Half-truth, that's what propaganda is made of. And I don't want to use such strong language. But when you hear half-truth and you don't hear the whole truth, and it's a lot of half-truth, that leads you to a lot of wrong conclusions. And I mean, you know, here's my, so like I said, I guess I'm somewhat of a contrarian. I'm a contrarian thinker. And you would expect to find that at a place like Morehouse. If everybody agreed, what kind of, I mean, what kind of tradition would that be if everybody agreed on the same thing? But when I heard the discussion at Crossroads, to me it sounded a little bit like an echo chamber where everybody was just high-fiving and slapping each other on the back over what I consider to be half-truths. Because I've been doing my own research. I'm sort of self-contained as an entrepreneur, and you know, I'm just somebody I just do my own research. I do my own thinking. I reach my own conclusions. I don't need anybody to tell me what to think. And I have a completely different take on, if you look on the news, and I don't care if you watch Fox News or CNN, my take is different from what you see on both of those. This is what I think is at stake. And I really think that black people look to a brand like Morehouse and they expect Morehouse to tell the whole truth. Not the half truth, the whole truth. You know, and I mean, this is a big issue in our community. Anybody who speaks any kind of support for Donald Trump is considered, oh, what's wrong with you? Don't you know he's a racist? I don't see that. I don't get that. Because, well, when I was at Morehouse, I had a professor that we all know and love in the business department whose name was John Williams. He was a funny guy. He would embarrass you in class. If you didn't have your research together, he would call you out in a heartbeat. And he used to have a saying. He said, think and then decide. Think and then decide. And I've been doing that. That's what I do. I like to think first. I like data. And hearing people just repeat something over and over, like he's a racist and his rhetoric is doing this to the country. To me, that's soft thinking. It's just soft thinking. Show me some data. Give me some numbers. Give me something I can wrap my mind around. Give me some facts. Let me explain some facts to you, which make me reach a completely different conclusion. While everyone is calling the man a racist, and you can really look at what happened this last week with Ice Cube. Ice Cube came up with this thing called a contract for Black America. I read it. It's okay. I mean, you know, if I had to grade it, I would give it like a C. It would be like a C minus, to be honest with you. It was full of a lot of old ideas, but in general, shit. It was asking for something for black people, for Black America, and that, to me, it's an A for that. He gets an A for effort. Okay. But what's interesting is he reached out to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and said, hey, who wants to talk? And the Democratic Party told him, you know, come see us after the election, which is funny, you know. But Donald Trump said, come see me. Let's talk. And based on that conversation, he modified his platinum plan, which is worth $500 billion to the black community. This is unprecedented in the history of America. Nobody, Democrat or Republican, has ever put anything like that on the table. So when I hear this discussion and I hear these intelligent brothers who I see on television, but they're in an echo chamber because they can't even talk about the platinum plan. They didn't even mention it. I mean, how can you not mention someone putting $500 billion on the table for our community? How can you just act like that didn't even happen? To me, that's a half-truth. That's a half-truth. And Dr. King told us, don't go for that. That's the okie doke, okay? That's the okie doke. And I have developed a framework which I call the okie doke or the wokey doke. And the wokey doke is a brand that my company has, so I'm going to just disclose that up front. Because I think we're in a time, I liked some of the comments Dr. Franklin made because somebody talked about, well, what time are we in? And I have given a lot of thought to this. We are in the time of truth. We're in the time of truth. I mean, if you think back in history, think about the Renaissance period, and the Industrial Revolution, the Age of Reason, all these different times where what was really happening, it was energetically, there was an energy that came into the universe that affected the consciousness of mankind. That's what's happening right now. The consciousness of mankind is being elevated, actually. Is being elevated. And in the time of truth, a lie cannot exist. It's a vibrational thing. And if you're not used to this language, it's going to sound very new agey to you. But the truth, these are just quantum mechanics and quantum physics. These are principles of quantum mechanics and how it works. You talk about co-resonance. Like attracts like. So what you have right now is there's two forces at work. There's a group of people who really are fighting change. They don't want to see change. And you can see it in statistics. And I didn't hear these brothers mention the fact that people like the Pew polls have done 92% negative coverage. That's what people have been watching for 4 years on television against President Trump. 92% negative coverage. That's how you get a lot of people believing, oh, he's just a racist. I don't see that. I saw 10 years of permanent funding for HBCUs. I didn't hear that on the conversation with our dear Morehouse brothers, who are very, very articulate. They're well-dressed. They got class, they got style, they're well-spoken, they're well-educated. But I didn't hear anything about the 10-year funding of the HBCUs. To me, this is a huge omission. It's a huge omission. Because all the people that they want to praise, Hillary Clinton, Brother Sellers is praising, he still thinks Hillary got robbed somehow. And I don't mean to laugh, but it's just ridiculous, Because when you look at the policies that damaged our community, I mean, Donald Trump just did criminal justice reform to undo what Joe Biden and those did, And I mean, it's just, we need to have a more balanced conversation. You can't just take the echo chamber on the mainstream media and then throw some Morehouse cats and then let them just talk to everyone and tell us all that, oh, this is the truth, because it's too many of us believe all these half truths, and it's not data driven. There's no data to support this. It's just talk and emotion, and it's not logical. I want to know about the 10-year permanent funding that we got from HBCUs. See, to me, that's a plus. The $500 billion put on the table, that's a plus. The criminal justice reform that's helping our community, that's a plus. The lowest unemployment in the history of this country for African Americans, that's a plus. And even this handling of this pandemic, now this is a very interesting issue to me, because what you have is two separate realities. You have all these lawyers who probably have never had a statistics course in their life, which is, it's easy to get duped when you don't know the numbers. When you don't understand that the fact of the matter is that thing is less deadly than the flu. And if it's less, and those are just the numbers. If you take the CDC's numbers, and there are so many reasons to believe that those numbers are not accurate. And I'm going to give you a good example. If you look at the statistics on the flu, apparently the flu has just disappeared. People are not dying from the flu anymore because they're assigning all of those deaths to COVID. That's one thing that's happening. But even if you take the numbers that they gave you, they said that only 6% of this so-called 200,000 number, about 6% of that, they only had COVID. All the other ones, these people were so sick, they were going to die. I mean, if someone went in there with cancer and they were dying from cancer, and they died and they happened to test positive for that, and first of all, those tests are highly inaccurate, and so you could say, oh, well, this is a conspiracy theory. It's not. You can call it whatever you want to call it. I call it common sense. But even if you take the 200,000 number, you're talking about something that's on par or less than the flu. You've never been told to wear a mask because of the flu. You've never been told to stay at home for 6 months because of the flu. And the reason you've never been told that is because that's not science. That's you can, you don't even, when you quote and worship these people like Dr. Fauci, then I have to ask you, have you done any research on them? Do you understand the patents and the people who control these patents and who's behind these companies? Even the CDC? Now I'm raising questions that, see, I said I was a contrarian thinker. You need to give me some evidence. And I'm going to look at all of the evidence. I'm not going to ignore a lot of data so that I can be in the echo chamber repeating what people are saying. Because it's bogus, man. It's bogus. And let's just go to, in entrepreneurship, in fact, I have a podcast called What Problem Are You Solving? If you start by asking the question, what problem are you solving? You can focus in on an answer, and it's going to focus your analysis. So let's ask, for Black America, let's just look at Black America, who looks to Morehouse brand. What problem is Black America solving? Here's the problem Black America is solving. All of these issues that Brother Sellers mentioned, the health disparities, it's all about the wealth disparities. It's the wealth disparities. That's why we don't have the same health care, access to healthy food deserts. All of those issues are economic issues. And you don't have to go that far. You can go to somebody like Dr. Claude Anderson. He has all the research on this. We have 0.5% of the nation's wealth. We should have closer to 14%. That's a number that hasn't moved since 1865. The problem we're solving, that we need to be solving, is that problem. The income and the wealth, really the wealth disparity, more so than the income disparity. Because we've been too focused on jobs and not on equity. Income is not so, you can't pass a job down to your family. You can pass down assets. We've been too focused on jobs and not focused enough on equity and ownership and really doing business with ourselves. We spend $1.4 trillion a year as Black people, just in America. Okay? And so I have a startup that's actually focused on that. We're trying to do 20% of the Black spend on one little super app, okay? So that's a lot of money, and it's a huge goal. But we're trying to move the needle. And part of the reason why, if you look at the 1.4 trillion, we don't even do 1% of that in terms of doing business with each other. And one of the reasons is capacity. 90% of Black-owned businesses only have one employee. See, to me, this is an intelligent. You need data. Give me some numbers to back up what you're saying. Calling Donald Trump a racist is, to me, soft thinking. Because LBJ was a racist. There's tapes that are out where LBJ was calling Black people all kinds of niggas. But Dr. King and them sat down and they cut a deal and they got what they could for the race. Well, this is all Ice Cube is trying to do. And people are calling him all kinds of traitor and, he's a puppet and he's getting used. They put $500 billion on the table. That's not nothing. That's not nothing. So if we were using any objective standard, we would say the man has earned a right to be president. And he has a relationship with our community. Because you can't keep accepting all these. We're getting a hell of a lot of benefits. Criminal justice reform is big. That's not nothing. $500 billion is big. It's not nothing. 10-year funding for HBCUs, and Dr. Franklin should know this better than anyone. Because he was the one who probably was going up there to D.C. to have to ask for money every year. Because that was the way they did it. And Trump said, that doesn't make any sense. Let's just do it for 10 years. Can he get any credit for that? I mean, are we using evidence-based thinking? Are we being logical? Because that's what Dr. King said we were supposed to do. When he said the purpose of education is to distinguish between the truth and propaganda, he said we need logical thinking. And logical thinking is backed up by data. And I didn't hear anything like that on this. I heard a lot of self-congratulatory, this is one of the most distinguished. These are just social signals to keep people asleep as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know, I'm not saying these brothers are anything other than honorable Morehouse men. I'm not attacking my Morehouse brothers on the issue of character or anything like that. I'm saying I believe that they're in an echo chamber. They're all saying the same thing to each other. And we need some contrarian thinkers to challenge this and say, hey, well, what about, because let me tell you what I think the biggest issue is that we're missing. Let me tell you the biggest issue. And it's so big, it's going to blow your mind when I tell you. But if you follow up with what I'm saying and do your own research, you're going to conclude he's not lying. Okay? Our dear brother Andrew Young made a video about 3 or 4 weeks ago where he said, he essentially made the pitch, the globalist pitch for a new world order. That's what's going on right now. Do you want to know why all the civil unrest is going on in the streets? It's bought and paid for. You want to know about these fires in the West? Those are directed energy weapons. That's not natural. There's nothing natural about it. If you look at the photographs and you look at, fire is not a new thing. We know what fire looks like, and we know what forest fires look like. And this is not that. This is something else. And when you look at where even this civil unrest, would you be surprised to know that out of sort of like 29 cities, all of the stuff is happening in these opportunity zones? And you know what's coming in after that? People are coming in there in these opportunity zones, and they want to do what they're calling affordable housing. Affordable housing. They want black people to rent forever. That's not equity. That's not helping to solve the wealth disparity gap. We actually have a product called the earned equity mortgage. We let them own it. If they pay rent for a certain amount of time, they should own that. And that's what we're going to do. You know, we're trying to really solve problems for our community. We're in a time of truth. Everything that's not true is falling away. Now, the brother towards the end, he asked a very good question. He said, are we headed for a civil war? Oh, yes, I think we might be. I think we might be. And it's not just a civil war. You were talking about a world war. And the two sides are the globalists, the ones who are taking all of our jobs offshore, telling us that they were never coming back. And the globalists have been in power for probably 30 years in this country. Longer than that. They've been planning this. It goes all the way back to the Treaty of Versailles, something like 1919. The whole idea of regional cooperation, that's what the United Nations is all about. And people want, Andy just made a pitch. He made a video and he made a pitch where he was talking about, essentially, he didn't say the word, but he's talking about a new world order. He said that he's basically saying the idea of sovereignty is dead. It doesn't belong to one country. What we need is a global CEO with a good personality who's going to listen to the experts. And when they say experts, they mean the ones we tell you to listen to. Don't listen to the ones who are telling you hydroxychloroquine is a cure for COVID. It knocks it out so fast. There's no need to talk about vaccines. There's no need to talk about vaccines because that's a cheap and effective drug. It's so safe, they give it to pregnant women. That's how safe it is. Okay? They've been doing it for 65 years. They use it in Africa to treat things like malaria. There was a French study that showed it's extremely effective on COVID. A lot of medical professionals have been taking it prophylactically to avoid getting it because they got to work in their hospital every day. So they've been taking low doses of it to avoid getting it. Why isn't that being on Bakari Sellers' CNN, beloved CNN? Why are they the ones that are trying to give us disinformation? They're not telling the truth. I don't give a shit how well spoken somebody is. If you're not telling the truth, I don't care. Okay? I don't want our brand Morehouse being confused with all these lies and this bullshit. I want us to tell the truth, okay? And it's pardon me for being a little impassioned, but I just want us to tell the truth. And if we're not smart enough to get to the truth. If all we can do is get in the echo chamber and call somebody a racist, that's soft thinking. That's very soft thinking. And that's not good enough. We can debate this stuff out and do whatever we need to do. You know? But I just care about the truth. I don't care how it comes. I don't care how articulate you. I don't care what news programs you. Are you telling the truth? Are the people you're talking to telling the truth? And I would say, no, I don't think they are telling the truth. I think they're lying. I think they lied about the Russian hoax. I think they've been lying about that. And you know why I think they've been lying about it? Because they said they had evidence. And I haven't seen it yet. And neither have you. Nobody has. That Mueller, they spent $42 million. They had 27 FBI agents full time looking for the so-called Russian evidence. They never found a damn thing because it was all a lie. So this 92% negative coverage that has everybody calling the president a racist, let me tell you what it's really all about. That's the okie doke. That's the half-truth, and it's pure propaganda, which Dr. King warned us against. I'm calling it out. I'm just going to call it out. You really mess with people's programming when you do this. People do not want to hear this. They would much rather believe that our president is. They didn't like the idea that nothing was found. They didn't find that good news. That was horrible news. And they didn't let us stop them from calling the man a racist. It doesn't matter that the man is taking advice from people like Kim Kardashian to let black people out of jail. I mean, what kind of, he must be the worst racist in the world. Because he goes around talking about the low unemployment for black people. He goes around talking about what he's doing for HBCU. What kind of racist? That's a pretty horrible racist. Because I don't think he understands how it works. You're not supposed to be on the side of the people who you're supposed to be racist against. You're not supposed to do that much for them. So I just think we need to get out of this echo chamber. We need to go back to evidence-based thinking and get all this emotionality out of the conversation, even though I'm being emotional, because this pisses me off, man, to see people lying to the people like that. And because the people, they believe it, and they look to people like Morehouse Men to tell them the truth. And I don't know if these brothers are just afraid, because I don't think Andy just woke up one day and said, let me make a video and go tell the whole world that it's time for a new world order. I think somebody told him, and I don't think he could say no. And I think a lot of these cats who are working on these programs, getting these fat checks, and that's great, man. It's good for you. But don't be surprised if some of us say, wait a minute, you guys, the stuff that you're saying doesn't have any evidence to it. It's not factually based. And in fact, the facts actually say that what's happening is that the globalists are fighting the patriots. The patriots, they want to preserve the Constitution. And all I care about is what's in the best interest of black people. And the other thing is, I don't really want anybody cramming anything down my throat and using lies to do it. These brothers were defending Kamala Harris. She had her chance. You know when she had her chance? When she ran in the primary and she couldn't even get 2%. 2%. She dropped out before Iowa. Why? Because she was rejected. The black people in California know who she is. And it's not about, she's a prosecutor. She didn't. Bullshit. She's accused, and Tulsi Gabbard took her down. When Tulsi Gabbard put that truth on her in that debate, it wasn't unfair. It wasn't misogynistic. It wasn't any of that bullshit. It was just the truth. People who study this issue understand that when slavery was over, they essentially moved that to the prison system. They made slaves out of prisoners. That's why we have one of the highest incarceration rates in the world. A lot of that prison labor is supporting big corporate actors. And that's what was going on in California. She was concerned. She spoke concern she didn't want to do reform because she was worried about what it was going to do to the labor. Can you imagine how unconscionable that is? I don't know how anyone can defend that. And if you defend it, that's your right. But it's also other people's right to say that doesn't work. We don't need people keeping black people in prison so that they can work for companies for cheap. We don't need that. That's not okay. It's not okay. It's just not okay. And I think when you have these discussions, you should have people with different opinions on and do it Morehouse style. Not this, we can watch CNN if we want to just watch propaganda. We don't need to watch some Morehouse brothers basically repeating the same thing, which really they might believe. They may really believe that. Andy might believe that we need a global CEO with a good personality who's going to listen to the experts. Let me tell you about experts. The Tuskegee experiment, everybody who worked in that was an expert. It's about trust and truth. And these scientists are lying. Let me tell you the other big omission they're making. Do you know they're killing 10 times as many people than this virus is? They're killing them by doing things like making them scared to go to the doctor. Cancer being undiagnosed. We can look at the statistics and we know that a certain number of people get cancer. Every year we know. But those people are not going to the hospital anymore. So now you got undiagnosed and untreated cancer. Why? Because of all this overhyping of something that's not even as deadly as the flu. You can wear your mask all you want. You can be afraid all you want. You can mask shame people all you want. But that doesn't change the numbers. It's not as deadly as the flu. It's because you have to understand, when you have a 100-year-old plan to take over the world, and you need to really, when you get behind who that is, there's a lot of eugenicists. They're always been obsessed with population. Go look at the Georgia Guidestones. Go look at them. They want the population to be under 500 million. That's a lot of people got to go. Could that be why there's this vaccine agenda? That's what Robert F. Kennedy has been trying to tell us for 20 years. He can't get any time on mainstream news. He has a lot of credibility. He's been working in these lawsuits where they've been getting billions of dollars from vaccine injury paid out. So much so that our bought-off politicians changed the law. Now, if you have a vaccine company, you don't have the same liability. So if you're a regular pharmaceutical company, you can still be getting sued for your drugs if they hurt people, but not vaccines. So now you're talking about a global mandated vaccine is $1 trillion business opportunity with zero liability. Could that be why there's all these patents? And look at the names on some of these patents. You'll see people like Fauci's name on those. Did you know that? That's called, Brother A.Scott Bolden, that's called an undisclosed conflict of interest. That's what they call it in your law game, my brother. That's what they call it in law, an undisclosed conflict of interest. And you can say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. You can do that all you want. You can call it whatever you want, but do your research before you come out here. Think and then decide. Evidence-based thinking. And if you do that, you will not be at this place where the reason why they're shooting at Donald Trump is because he is not a globalist. If there's any business people out there, do your analysis. Ask yourself, if you're a real estate if you're in the real estate business, you're a developer, what is the main thing that you want? And John Williams can tell you that. He was one of the first people to get a PhD in real estate, which he got from Georgia State, I do believe. You want local jobs. If you're a real estate developer, you want local jobs. He's not a globalist. It doesn't do you any good to ship all the jobs offshore because the money's going offshore. You can't sell people stuff if they don't have money. So while they were bankrupting America, gutting our industrial base, so much so that almost our entire supply chain of pharmaceuticals is in China. That is what you call a threat to national security. If we went to war with China, they could kill us just by withholding medicine. See, you need critical thinking, man. You can't come on here talking about talking about what you hear on CNN. He's a racist. That's not good enough, man. That is not good enough. It's just not. Because there's too much at stake. If you're wrong, let me tell you, if you're wrong, if these eugenicists who are using all these lies, trickery, and money, they're buying off a lot of people. They own all these networks. That's why, I mean, the press secretary for the President of the United States tweeted an article that was on the front page of the New York Post because they have factual data, evidence that Joe Biden and his son were corrupt. They have evidence of it. And they wrote an article on it. If they don't believe it, let them go and sue. Let them go sue the New York Post. The New York Post is not stupid. They're not stupid. Why is Twitter banning the press secretary from posting an article? Because Twitter, all of these big major tech oligarchs, that's what they are. The oligarchs want a new world government. That's why you see the civil unrest in the street. So all of this stuff is happening on the watch of Morehouse Men. And I don't care if I'm the only one who sees it. If I see it, I'm going to say something. Like I said, I'm a contrarian thinker. You can call me crazy. You can call me anything you want to call me. But one thing you will not call me, you will not say that my research is flawed until you go do it yourself. Go do your research. Go see, why is someone who didn't even graduate from college making healthcare policy? Why is Bill Gates making policies about vaccines? Going on TV, oh, everything's going to be, until we get a vaccine. You know what the okie doke is? If there's a safe and effective treatment, you can't fast track a vaccine. That's why they had to shoot at hydroxychloroquine. It definitely works. It definitely works. And it's definitely safe. 65 years worth of data says it's safe. What did CNN have when they said it's not safe? Some study that got retracted almost as fast as it was. I mean, totally bogus study. And you got scientists from Yale, like Dr. Reish is his name. This guy is an epidemiologist, one of the most respected in his field, and he's been blowing the whistle the whole time, saying he doesn't know what they're talking about. Hydroxychloroquine is safe and it is effective. So why are they talking about these vaccines? Why did they shut down all the schools when the kids don't even get this? Because it's not about that. It's about the New World Order. It's about the net that's converging on the globe. And our Morehouse brothers are complicit, either knowingly or unknowingly. They're complicit because they're using soft thinking. And I want Dr. King to rise up from the grave and come back and tell us to read his doggone paper that he wrote, where he said the purpose of education is to know the difference between truth and propaganda. Let's listen to our dear Morehouse brother that we love to quote. But do we really think about what he's saying? Do we read what he's saying? This is a dangerous time in this world. It's time for somebody to sound the line. This is not the time for cheerleading, backslapping, and soft thinking. Soft thinking. Oh, Donald Trump is a racist. You ignored everything good that he did, and that makes you suspect. You don't have any credibility. At least if you told a balanced view, people might be willing to listen to you. But I don't want to hear, when you leave out all of that factual data, and these are big things, man. These are not small. Criminal justice reform was big. $500 billion, that's big. So we're not talking about just a small omission. It means the facts don't matter to you. You don't need facts. Your emotions, your echo chamber, and whoever tells you to say what you say is directing what you're saying. And I'm saying research and the truth. That's what's directing what I'm saying. It may not be as eloquent, and I don't really care. I'll take the truth in an ineloquent fashion over the most eloquent lie. A lie is still a lie. So that's what I have to say about it. That's what I have to say about it. And I'm a contrarian thinker. I'm going to tell you something that I did that benefited Morehouse from this same kind of contrarian thinking. My good friend was working on something for Morehouse at the time. She was the mayor of Atlanta, named Shirley Franklin. She was the mayor of Atlanta, and the King papers came up for sale, and they were going to put them on the auction. And it was all in the newspaper. There's only two places those papers can go. to the Atlanta Historical Society or Emory. That was the word. And she was a client of mine. And I used to be in the mortgage business when I was a student at Morehouse. And you guys can look up, there's an article in 1987 where they wrote about student entrepreneurs at Morehouse. I was in that article for my mortgage business. That's when I met Shirley Franklin. And we maintained a friendship over a lot of years. I then went into investment banking. But anyway, so, it's not unusual for us to talk about things like that, ideas or whatever. So we were on the phone, and she was actually down at Morehouse, negotiating some of the stuff. And I said, there's only one place for those papers. And she said, well, I said, Morehouse. Her son, Cabral, went to Morehouse. Her ex-husband, rest his soul, David Franklin, went to Morehouse. She knows about Morehouse. And she said they can't afford him. I said, and I said, well, you raised all this money. She essentially syndicated a guarantee so that she could take care of the family. And I think it was around $32 million. Bank of America did the loan. People like Herman Russell and a lot of others stepped up to their credit and guaranteed this loan. But everybody got their money back too. Which you have to take your hat off to Shirley Franklin. But she said, well, they can't afford them because what happens is people get in an echo chamber. When the Atlanta Journal-Constitution writes there's only two places those papers can go, immediately Negroes start debating, well, which one of those two places, except the contrarian thinkers. They don't do that. The contrarian thinkers say, why should Emory get those papers when Dr. King couldn't even go to that school? When he was at Morehouse, he couldn't even go to Emory. They didn't let black people go there. His father went to Morehouse. His sons went to Morehouse. He went to Morehouse. Why shouldn't the papers be at Morehouse? So she goes in to see Dr. Massey. And this is the story she told me. She called me about a couple of days after me. She said, Kevin, I want you to know you are the only one. You're the only one who said that. She said the King family didn't say it. Dr. Massey didn't say it. In fact, when she said to Dr. Massey, do you guys want these papers? The first thing he said was, we can't afford it. And she said, I didn't ask you if you could afford it. I asked you if you wanted them because I'm about to give them to you. And that's why the King papers are at Morehouse. And I really wish Lerone Bennett Jr. I saw him at a candle in the dark, and I told him, I said, you really, part of the reason I went to Morehouse was because I ran into you when you came to my junior college in Kansas. So I'm just, I may be a little crazy. I might be a little contrarian thinker, but, I've made a contribution. I've done, I think any good Morehouse man would have done that, but I was there. Sometimes you're just in the room. Sometimes you're just in the conversation. So I want to be a part of this conversation with my Morehouse brothers. And I appreciate and respect my Morehouse brothers who are on this call. Because like I said, I think everybody, I want to give everybody credit for having a good heart. But I just want to challenge us to make sure that I'm thinking. And I'm not read into whatever's happening because I'm outside. Maybe everybody knows that, hey, this going down, because it wasn't just that Andy made a video. About a week ago, the New York Times said the same thing. They're making the move now. Yes, there could be a civil war because they're trying to, essentially, we're under attack by the globalists right now. It's a soft coup, and they're using technology to do it. This is America. You're supposed to have freedom of speech. Freedom of speech means freedom of speech. We don't have freedom of speech because the public forum is online. And you got these oligarchs who are protected by law from being sued, and they need to take that away. If you're going to monitor opinions and monitor speech, Facebook had the nerve to say we're limiting the distribution of certain information. That's called censorship. Where's Scott Bolden on that issue? Why aren't you screaming from the rafters that this is not what we do in America? Why aren't the lawyers talking about that? Why isn't Bakari Sellers talking about that? because they're doing it too at CNN. They're censoring everybody, left and right. And you got our people watching that thinking it's real. It's not. It's fake. It's the half-truth. It's the okie doke. Dr. King said, don't go for the half-truth. And I, for one, I'm one Morehouse man that says I'm going to stand up and I'm going to stand on what Dr. King said. You know, you can say whatever you want to say about me. I'm not trying to win a popularity contest, okay? I don't give a damn if anybody likes me. I don't care, but I'm going to tell the truth. And I challenge everyone else. Do your homework. Do your homework. Don't just be repeating all this stuff you hear on TV. And don't ignore other things that are dispositive. You know, there's much more evidence that Trump is not a racist than there is that he is a racist. And I would really like for us to look at all of the data. That's what I have to say. I apologize. I'm being emotional because it's, you know, this is the kind of thing. You had people in Nazi Germany wearing a Star of David. They were forced to wear a Star of David. Now you had certain people like the banker, Felix Rohatyn. Him and his family got the hell out. But you had people wearing the Star of David, telling themselves everything's going to be okay. Once this Hitler guy gets out of the way, you know, he's just a politician and everything's going to be okay. Those people wind up in the wrong line. And a lot of them died. The mask that is not scientifically based, it's bullshit. Calling that science is bullshit. If that was science, how come it's never been, in the history of man, how come they never made us wear a mask before for a virus that's less deadly than the flu? That's not science. That's bullshit. That's the okie doke. It's not science. But because people are so programmed to believe what they see on TV, except the contrarian thinkers, to me, it's so obvious that it's bullshit. It's not, and it's breaking down along political lines because people are virtue signaling. If you're a Democrat and if you believe in this and that, like, then you should believe these so-called experts, this so-called science. It's not science. Because they're also ignoring all the people it's killing. People can't pay their bills. People are losing their jobs. 60% of the restaurant business is going out of business. That's also planned because they want to take control of the food supply. You're going to be given a chip inside of a vaccine. That's why the vaccine agenda is there. All of these are serious issues. You can call them conspiracy theories if you want. I'm sure they said the same thing in Germany. The people who had the Star of David walking around shopping, being dehumanized, just like people who are being forced to, that's a dehumanizing. That mask has been used to dehumanize people going back to the beginning of time. It's a dehumanizing thing. It turns you from, it takes your individuality away. You know, so, you know, I mean, you know, I'm really saddened by the fact that more Morehouse men are not speaking up and saying, you know, I'm not seeing the same thing these guys are seeing. I want to know, where are those brothers, man? And I was a big Bernie supporter. I've been a lifelong Democrat. I just told you one of my close friends, you know, and I would say like a mentor type too, was Shirley Franklin. I've been all over Africa with Andy Young. I love Andy. Okay, I respect Andy. But I think what's going on is a lot bigger than Andy. These are not his ideas. I think that there's this new world order is being imposed on the globe. And I can tell you for 100% certain, the patriots in this country, they believe in the U.S. Constitution. They believe in the Declaration of Independence that talked about we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. People will fight and die for that idea. They're not getting ready to let somebody put a Chinese model and turn us all into Chinese peasants. Do you know they got 3 million people in prison over there? They got they got Muslim people over there in prisons, human rights violations out the wazoo. We're not going to go for that kind of system. And I want the brothers, you guys, when you're on TV telling this shit, telling these lies, you need to ask yourself, what are you doing to your people? This is serious. This is serious business. If you just are doing what everyone else is telling you, then I would say you are unknowingly complicit. You're still complicit. You have a duty. You have a duty to do the research, know what the hell you're saying. If you don't agree with it, resign. Go work at your uncle's cleaners. To use the Eddie Murphy joke. I just have to work at my uncle's cleaners. I don't give a damn if I had to eat in the soup line. I'm not getting ready to sell my people down the river with all this half soft thinking. I'm gonna be with Dr. King. You know, I may not get there with you. That's okay. But I'm not gonna sell out my people, and I'm not gonna allow this soft thinking to mislead people. How in the shit is somebody named Joe Biden who there's so much more evidence that he's a racist. This man spoke at the Ku Klux Klan Bird's funeral. The Grand Wizard, all of them are I mean, you know, you're going to ignore all of that and call the man a racist who's doing more for our community? This is the time of truth. All the things that are not true are falling away. And I do think there's going to be a conflict. I think people are going to fight. I think it's going to be ugly. It might take about a year. But I can tell you, I will make a prediction right here, right now, and you will say, hey, one of our Morehouse brothers said that was going to happen. Truth is going to prevail. We're not ready to give up our sovereignty. We don't need to do that. See, if the New World Order was any good, they could just come out and tell the truth and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Well, they got Andy saying it now. They got Andy out here talking about it. It's in the New York Times. Why isn't it on CNN? For that matter, why isn't it even on? They kind of talk around it on shows like Laura Ingraham. You know, they talk around it, but they don't tell you that we're at a fork in the road. We are at a crossroads. Do you believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the U.S. Constitution? Do you believe in that model, or do you want to be like China? Go to China and see. Nobody's saying that the most freedom is in China. So why is Andy selling us that model? Why is the New York Times selling us a model? Why is CNN covering up everything and shooting at the only one who's standing in the way of that plan? Donald Trump is not a globalist. He's a patriot. That's in the interest of black people. Because if they put a Chinese system in, and black people are a permanent underclass. If you look at the data, if we have 0.5% of the wealth and we should have 14% of it, and that number hasn't changed since 1865, then that means we're a permanent. We already make up the peasants, but at least we're free peasants. The Chinese peasants aren't even free. They can't even really fight for rights. If they do that, they'll get mowed down in the street with a tank. You know, and all of those same systems, the censorship, they have a net on top of the internet in China that doesn't allow you to even know what the hell is really going on. That's what's happening here. These oligarchs are doing that to us here in America. And I would like to see the Morehouse lawyers fight for the Constitution. Fight for that. That's what's in the best interest of black people. Because if they put that system in, black people are going to have it the worst. And I feel that people of conscience and intellect and integrity need to speak up. And, you know, I could be completely wrong. But I don't think I am. And it's scary. The only reason that system isn't in place is because Bakari Sellers' beloved Hillary Clinton didn't win. Or if she won in 16, we'd already be under that system. The TPP, that was going to be another job-killing trade deal, which really didn't even have anything about trade. When you look at the methods, when you use dishonest methods, that deal was so secret, even our elected officials didn't have a copy of it. They had to go into a room, a skiff. They had to go into a secure room leave their phones. They could read it and they could walk the hell out and they were expected to vote on. That's the people's representative. If you're comfortable with those methods, that's probably why you're comfortable with somebody who couldn't even get 2% of the vote. The most popular politician on the left is Bernie Sanders. He's not on the ticket. They're playing black people. And if Morehouse men go for that okie doke, then Morehouse isn't Morehouse. Unless at least one person says, I call bullshit. I call bullshit. And I have lost relationships with family, friends. I'm an ENFP on the Myers-Briggs test. The ENFPs, they're the ones they're the revolutionaries in the world. A lot of them are ENFPs. A lot of the comedians are ENFP, the truth tellers. I don't care if I'm the only person on this planet. If I believe this is the truth, I'm going to tell it. And I'm not looking for any points. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid of anything. Because I know myself as a divine being. And I see everything else as, this is a spiritual thing. We need to align to the truth. If we want to honor our ancestors who built this country, we're just going to hand it over and just say we don't care about the Constitution anymore. That's the only thing protecting us in some ways. It allows us to, as Dr. King said, protest. We have the right to protest for rights. All that'll be gone. And they're trying to do it right now. They got Dr. King, they got Andy Young trying to sell it to you on, we need a global personality with a good personality, a global CEO. No, we don't. We need a constitutional republic. That's what we need. And we can really try to make this country better. And we need to fight to close this racial disparity gap, which we're doing using entrepreneurship. We need to create more business owners and capture part of this $1.4 trillion we're spending. So, when you're in entrepreneurship, your research, it does not pay you to believe stuff that's not true. So you treat data as if it's neutral. And to me, data is neutral. And that's probably why I can see this and a lot of people can't. Because it's definitely not. That conversation I heard from my dear Morehouse brothers was not neutral. It was so partisan and it was completely devoid of any facts. There were think of all the statistics that I'm giving you. Did you hear any statistics come out of any of those lawyers' mouths? No, you did not. No, you did not. And that should raise a red flag. So it is what it is. I really want this to be in the spirit of Morehouse, where we always had vigorous debate, because I don't have to be right. You don't have to be right. But together, we got to be right, because the world, Black America, looks to us to know some of this stuff. And if we wind up in the line, I don't want anybody saying, where were the Morehouse men? How come they didn't tell us? How come they didn't warn us? So that's my piece. All right. And so, I'm looking forward to this discussion. And, see, Donald Trump is not going to lose. These polls are so full of shit. These are the same polls that told you on the day of the election that Hillary could not lose. These are the same polls. It's propaganda. Because the people, this is a 100-year-old plan that you're seeing. It's a 100-year-old plan. That's why it's hard to see. And because they're using technology, it's not in your face as much, but it's in my face. I grew up, I remember when freedom of speech, I remember when the test was, will you defend the speech of the person's speech who you hate the most? And in our case, that was people like the Klan who wanted to burn the flag. We had to defend their right to burn the flag. We had to defend their right to march in their hoods and say whatever they wanted to say. Yes, I support their right to do that. That's freedom of speech. Fact checkers is censorship. And we're just allowing our rights to be eroded in front of us. Where's the Morehouse men on that? Get all this soft thinking, man. Later for that. This is not the time for that, Dr. Franklin. I don't care how articulate you are, okay? And I don't care. You can believe what, and I think a lot of the brothers believe what they believe because they're just getting too emotional about data. Data is neutral. Just look at the data. Yes, we need criminal justice reform, but you can't conflate all these issues. That's not Donald Trump out there killing people. This man is trying to be part of the solution. Give him credit where it's due. That's what honest people do. Tell the truth. That's all I got to say about it, my dear Morehouse brothers. Peace.